Hello everyone, today we will talk about our media systems are reaching their limits. From climate change to COVID, the print media paradigms we've built fail to capture the most pressing phenomena of our time. As Rob Nixon warns us, the slow violence of climate change is very difficult to detect because it occurs on such a temporal and spatial scale that it may not even be considered violence at all. Although we may have photographs of a flood here or a fire there, we are always unable to represent the thing itself on a scale that contradicts not only our perceptual abilities, but even our conventional notions of what constitutes an object. Again, these crises are too large, too small, diffuse, or inhuman to fit into our prepackaged genres and media. Trajectory throughout the past century may seem like a series of expansions. Each new development was a site of contestation. The history of media is, in many ways, a tug-of-war between those who have wanted to expand and those who have sought to constrain. Writers like Hugo Münsterberg in the early 20th century, for instance, resisted the incorporation of synchronized sound into film by arguing that sound interfered with the chance of the moving pictures to develop their original nature. Decades later, the introduction of color was met with similar friction from the artistic establishment, who thought it crass, causing color photography to remain relegated to the margins of artistic practice until photographers like Saul Leiter or Joel Meyerowitz began to change popular opinion in the mid-century. Even looking toward recent developments, we find this tension between expansion and reduction at play. Despite the ubiquity of digital media, the transition from the film cell to computer code had its fair share of skeptics who argued that the loss of filmic indexicality might put us in a position of total cynicism with regard to the image. Moreover, these evolutions didn't occur in a vacuum, but were constantly responding to broader shifts in the economic and technological architectures. For example, our ocular-centric epistemology, whereby visuals become tied to the cultural reality of events, can be closely linked to the rise of TV over radio as our de facto mass media channel. More recently, the ascent of social media platforms has helped further flatten media by filtering it through an underlying logic of limited attention and thumb-stop rates, sifting out content that isn't relatively short, digestible, effectively loaded, and spectacularly visual. Informing itself around these attributes, this flat media sacrifices complexity for convention, nuance and density for immediacy, chimeric media, as opposed to the flat media we have now, introduces depth into this paradigm. Like the fabled chimera after which it's named, this media will be heterogeneous, mixing the human with the non-human, the particular with the monumental, disrupting traditional. Like the fabled chimera after which it's named, this media will be heterogeneous, mixing the human with the non-human, the particular with the monumental, disrupting traditional categories and creating new formation. We begin by deconstructing the two pillars that constitute the heart of current media culture: a belief in the discrete senses, which supports our media's ocularcentrism, and a view of media as a carrier of distinctly human meaning, which supports its anthropocentrism. Why lay view of media as sense extenders, for example photography extending sight? Radio extending hearing seems true enough at first glance. Complications begin to arise when we turn our attention to the senses themselves. In Anima, Aristotle demarcated 5 senses that supposedly compose our perceptual field: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. To this day, we're taught that we have 5 senses, that each sense correlates to a different organ and operates on relatively independent registers, and that among the senses, sight is the primary modality by which we apprehend. Barry Smith, from the Centre for the Study of the Senses at University of London, hones in on the intellectual origins of this last point when he tells the Irish Times that the great thinkers of the past would often create their theories of perception by beginning with a visual example and building around that, leading to the persistent conflation between visual perception and perception as a whole. In reality, the picture is far more complex than we had ever imagined. At a different point in his conversation, Barry Smith notes that there could be anything between 22 and 33 human senses, many of which aren't associated straightforwardly with a body part. Experiments, for example, have indicated that humans may have a form of magnet or reception or the ability to sense magnetic fields, which notably lacks any corollary organ. Not only are our senses more diverse than we initially thought, they are also more intertwined, always in the process of talking behind our back, as one article by Brendan. Rather than being essentially modal and discrete, our experience is fundamentally synesthetic, reflecting the late phenomenologist Merleau-Ponty's view that the basic level of perception is a comprehensive field, or gestalt. It becomes challenging to articulate what might even qualify as a sense like sight when one considers those who use auditory echolocation, which activates areas of the visual brain to navigate space. Our brain simply isn't wired to process each sensory input on its own, because no one sense tells it enough to accurately construct the world. In an important way, the whole precedes the parts when it comes to perception. Incorporating these insights into our media paradigm yields a new set of possibilities. The assumed primacy of sight becomes destabilized, and our entire bodies become a receptive field for media. That I have given seem broad and varied. That is intentionally so. The phenomena that reveal the limitations of our current media are too complex to be approached through a single, prescriptive manner, and our expanded paradigm shouldn't replicate the failures of its predecessor. Having challenged the dominance of sight and anthropos and revealed the false assumptions on which our media rests, we've reopened avenues that have long been cordoned off. There is no singular path forward for this many-headed chimeric media, but a series of simultaneous possibilities. Flat media will continue to exist, and this new media may face difficulties gaining traction within a digital distribution system that prefers low fidelity, digestible, mobile content. But our media have been undergoing an evolution, pitting expansion against containment for as long as we've had media to contest, and our need for a paradigm that is truer to the world as varied and multifaceted and colorful is only growing. Just as we came to accept color, synchronized sound, or digitality as dimensions of our media, we might come to accept leafy plants and fungi alongside celluloid and code. Though the media to come may not look or feel like any that have come before, it will be all the better for it.